Hello, everyone. This is Belial. Welcome to Belial's Tea House and Juma Mubarak on this Good Friday. I today wanted to discuss the depiction of Rumi, one of the greatest poets in human history, in my opinion, and how he's depicted in Western or just American society or contemporary society. Often Rumi is lopped in with New Age philosophy and essentially more granola-y ways of thinking. And although, yes, it's true, Rumi was very into metaphysics, although that wasn't what they called it back then, he was also a very devout Muslim. And in American society today, he is actually the number one poet. If you go off of who people are reading, for a few years running now, Rumi is the most popular poet in America. Now, he's been dead for many centuries, and may Allah grant him Jannah, but what I want to say here is that often people will read Rumi or people will market Rumi's poems and works, but I feel as if people are allergic to the elephant in the room that he is a devout Muslim. People seem to be afraid to embrace that aspect of his identity. Often people will take what he's written and his quotes and get what they want out of it without actually looking at the context of what he's talking about, such as his poem, The Tavern, which people can interpret poetry in different ways, and how I interpret it and how I would say is the very common Islamic interpretation of Rumi's poem, The Tavern, is the alcohol and the intoxication discussed within it is talking about how this life, this dunya, as we would say, is temporary, and the drunkenness is that connection, that holding on to worldly things, and they are finding themselves trying to find the spiritual path, which doesn't necessarily, I'm not preaching here, I'm just saying that's what it's talking about, or at least that's a very common interpretation among people who actually do read Rumi's work, understanding that he is a devout Muslim. But as a friend of mine said, even Islamophobes will quote Rumi, but it just speaks to this general misunderstanding about Islam, this fear of Islam in contemporary Western society. But it's also funny that people will read Rumi and just not even know of his religion, or even know that he was a great Sufi, a great teacher. It's quite sad, but I think that the best thing we can do as Muslims and as people who enjoy poetry is to acknowledge that. If somebody talks about Rumi in a literature class, we should bring this up. We should always say that, we are proud that Rumi is of our ummah, that Rumi is our brother, and we should always acknowledge his leanings and his faith. At least that's my thought, and maybe this is just a kind of a ramble, but that is the point of these conversation videos that I have, is really just to ramble and to discuss what my thoughts are. And I had this thought while I was at the bookstore purchasing some new books, and I picked up a new translation of Rumi and some of his work, and I looked at it and I read the back, and it's discussing how he's this great thinker and teacher, which is true, but they always describe him as a mystic, but they never mention what kind of mystic he was, and they seem to be allergic to acknowledging his Muslimness. Anyways, I just wanted to share this thought. Feel free to comment, discuss if you'd like in a civilized manner, and as always, if you'd like to like and subscribe, I appreciate it. Really enjoying reading all to you and just sharing my love of poetry and literature with the wider internet. Forgive my ramblings. Thank you all. Have a good day. Juma Mubarak.